You know the progress bar that we have in the application? Wouldn't it be great if we could update that based on the status of the asynchronous operation? I'm sorry to say, but the task in the task parallel library doesn't support reporting on the progress.
This means you'll need to build something yourself to report the progress of a task. Thinking about this problem, it's kind of obvious that you'd need to build something yourself. How would the framework know the progress of a task? How would it know what inside the asynchronous operation determines the progress? As an example, in the case of working with a stock file, would it update the progress based on how much of the file have been loaded or how much of the data that we've processed? Either way, we'd need to introduce our own way of computing the progress. Let's try and build something that reports the progress and updates the progress bar based on how many stocks have been completely loaded. This means that if we are searching for 5 stocks, we'll update the progress bar 5 times. In WPF, we're using a progress bar. If you're working in other applications, you might have similar controls available. Remember, this is just the UI layer. The framework component that we'll introduce works in any type of .NET application. What we're initially doing when we are clicking search is that we are resetting the progress bar to some initial value. This is just WPF specific. We'll set the value of the progress bar to 0, which means we currently have no progress. Then we'll set the maximum amount of progress to the number of stock identifiers that we are currently trying to search for. To report the progress, we'll introduce something called progress of t. This class is available in any type of .NET application, and it doesn't even require you to have a UI. Progress of t provides an implementation of the interface iProgress of t. This allows you to subscribe to an event, which will be triggered to notify that the progress is updated. Whenever there's an update to the progress, the event is triggered and gets data passed to it. The type of data is determined by the generic parameter on the progress. We could ask for the entire IEnumerable of stock prices that we've just loaded. When we are creating the instance of the class progress of t, it's going to capture the synchronization context. The synchronization context isn't something that you'd normally use directly. However, the dispatcher, for example, uses this internally. Another example of where this is used is with the awaiter. It is using it when communicating back to the original context. With that being said, the original context or thread is really just accessed using this synchronization context. The instance of the progress class will capture the synchronization context. This means that whenever it reports the progress, we know that the event is executed on the calling context, which in our case is the UI thread. We can subscribe to the event called progress changed. This event will be raised for each time that we update the progress. To subscribe to this, we'll simply introduce an event handler as an anonymous method. The first parameter passed to the event handler is the sender. As we don't care about that, we can use the discard. The second parameter, though, is going to be the stocks that we just loaded and got passed into the progress update. Inside the body of the event handler, we can update and interact with the UI. We'd like to update the value of the progress bar, but also make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to add some notes in the application to indicate which stock just loaded and how many stock prices that we got with this update. This will now increase the progress bar and then update the note to tell us which stock it currently completed loading. We did get the entire lists of stocks that we loaded, so we could do even more things with that if we'd like to. There's now a way to handle a progress update. Now we just need a way to trigger this event itself. The best practice when working with the iProgress is to pass the reference into the asynchronous methods that will indicate a progress change. We'll pass an instance of the progress of T into search for stocks, which is called from search click. This, of course, means that we need to change the method signature of this method. We'll say that this expects the interface iProgress of T. In our case, the T is an IEnumerable of stock price, as that's what's going to be passed into the progress update. Each time that we get some stock data back, we want to update the progress of the application. The best way to do that is to chain on a continuation to the task that's loading all the stocks. We'll also return the data from the continuation to make sure that the rest of the application still works properly. Inside the continuation, before returning the stocks, we want to report the progress. We'll make sure that we don't report the progress if we don't have an instance. For this, we can use the null conditional operator, which means it will only call report if the progress is set to an instance. The iProgress interface exposes the report method. You can use this to report the progress. Anyone subscribing to the event will now get a report that we got an update of our progress. Because we've specified that we have an iProgress of IEnumerable of stock price, we have to pass a list of the stock prices. We get this from the result property that is available on the task passed into the continuation. As we request some stocks to be loaded, not only does it update the progress in the application, it also adds a nice note to let us know how many stocks were loaded and that we got back to the application. For each stock identifier that we are loading, we update the progress bar. And with very minimum effort, we introduced progress reporting. This gives you an insight into the complexity of introducing progress reporting. There's no built-in automatic way to report progress, and now you know why. You need to find places in your asynchronous operations where it makes sense to add the progress reporting. In this case, it was rather simple. We could simply report the progress of each stock that was loaded. So depending on the situation, it might be easy for you to add this to your particular asynchronous operation. But in other cases, it might be really hard, given the fact that the tasks themselves don't report on any progress. You'll need to find a way to get this into your asynchronous methods on your own.
Even with these limitations, introducing iProgress in your applications gives you a nice and easy way to work with progress reporting.